Welcome once again to a Chef Knives to Go Quick Look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we have this time is the Yahiko Shirogami Hairline Gyuto 240mm knife. So this line of knives has a core steel of Shirogami or white paper number 2, reactive high carbon steel from Hitachi. He treats a somewhat conservative 6061 Rockwell in that core steel, so that's going to make these really easy to sharpen. The construction is on either side of that harder core steel. This is clad in a soft iron material, and so this is reactive, sometimes even more reactive than the core steel. And so this is an all-reactive blade. There's no stainless or semi-stainless on it. The cladding, we'll get a close-up look at it, has what they call hairline, which is a brushed finish, so the finish strokes go horizontal on the blade instead of vertical from spine to edge, like a standard kind of belt finish. And we'll talk about that in a second. The weight and dimensions will vary just a little bit from knife to knife. This one is 197 grams or 6.9 ounces. Edge length about 248, so it's a fairly big 240. 9.75 inches, that's from the tip to the back of the heel, the chin. And then the overall length about 15.5 inches. One of the most impressive things about all the knives in this line, this is the 5th one, so I've seen 5 of them. They all have a very impressive distal taper from the heel, or the back of the knife, all the way down to the tip. So I measured these in 3 places, which I don't usually do. So this one is a little over 4 millimeters out of the handle, but that's not a big deal because it thins out pretty quickly to about 2.1 halfway down, and then about 1.1 about an inch from the end. So the tips on these are really well executed. They're very high performance knives. They're very thin at the edge, so excellent performers. 52.6 is the height on this, millimeters at the heel. Generous amount of board clearance, as you can see. The handles are octagonal white oak with buffalo horn ferrule, and on most of these I've noticed a slight step between the wood and the buffalo horn. Not objectionable, but it is there. Handle circumference about 71 millimeters or 2.8 on this one. So these tend to be a little thinner handles than on some knife lines. They're also built so they're a little bit taller and thinner this way. They're not as squarish or roundish in terms of dimensions. So that contributes to the size. And the balance point, this handle's really light. So these handles are all quite light. So the balance point is pretty well forward there, and that's actually in front of my pinch grip. So this knife does have despite being pretty light for such a big knife, it's got a little bit of heft to it, and give you a little bit of power. You definitely know you got a knife in your hand with this thing. It's still pretty darn stiff, even though it gets pretty thin. You got a little bit of flex towards the tip, but overall it's a pretty stiff, confident knife. So the look on these is very cool. You can see that brushed finish, or the hairline finish. You've got hand chisel kanji on the right side of the blade. One of the cool things about the brush finish is as you clean a knife and dry it, you tend to go this way with the knife with your towel like that. And or I'm left-handed. If you're right-handed, you're going to do it that way. But you tend to get scratches going this way with the knife, and so this finish helps hide those scratches and they blend in better. You've got hand chisel kanji on the right side of the blade. This is really cool. It's nicely executed. You can feel it with your finger. So it's a cool effect. These don't have a hard shoulder on the grind. They just kind of have a nice contour and convex down to the edge. So they tend to have low wedging. Not the world's best product release, but very low wedging, very high performance. It's really very artfully done. Quite thin at the edge. Great rounding and polishing of the spine, and also the choil in the back of the blade. So these are ready to go out of the box except for the edge. The edge looks nice, but I'd say maybe 4 out of 10 on the sharpness scale. So you'll want to go ahead and touch these up. If you're not a sharpener, I would suggest add to your cart the Chef Knives to Go Finish sharpening service, which is true of every knife. I've had 5 of these in my hands, and they all basically have the same edges on them. So if you don't know how to sharpen, spend that it's worth every penny to have them put a really nice edge on it, so you'll get an idea just how sharp these knives can get, and also what kind of edge retention to expect out of a well-crafted, clean edge. Well worth it, in my opinion. People can sometimes be amazed how sharp these things will get, and unless you experience that, you don't know. You just don't know what you don't know, right? So here is the edge profile. These tend to have low tips on them relative to the center line of the knife, so you don't get real high on the rock on these. I'm down here on that. You could probably tweak the tip a little bit with your edge that you want to put on it and get that tip maybe facing upwards a little bit, and you'll get a higher rock on it. But these tend to be just kind of fairly low rockers. They're all very similarly made as far as shape goes. So they've got a lot of good consistency from knife to knife within this line. Your profile just has a decent flat towards the back, not especially curvy, not super flat, but it should chop nicely. It should push-pull nicely. It's just not a huge rocker. I can rock over love stuff, no problem. Like I said, if you want to tweak that tip a little bit, if you know what you're doing there, you could probably get this thing to rock a little higher if you wanted to do that. But just an impressive line of knives, very high performers, nice looking. I think there's a lot of value in this line. So this is the Yahiko Shirogami Hairline Gyuto 240mm knife.